Today we're going to talk about thriving in China's new post-COVID normal. Regardless of your opinions about China, you are undoubtedly aware of our collective challenge to improve cross-cultural communications and work more collaboratively. Prior misunderstandings that could more easily have been forgiven or even funny are now more contentious today and require a higher level of awareness to reconcile. COVID-19, Trumpism, and heightened nationalism in the Xi era created a perfect storm of skepticism on both sides that will cascade into dysfunction without new communication patterns to combat its fatigue. Today, we're going to discuss a better approach for elevating cultural sensitivity, improving adaptability, and mastering virtual communication tactics that are essential for addressing post-COVID-19 business challenges. Being aware that there are solutions to these challenges will ensure that you can create more constructive communication patterns and master the complexities of doing business in today's Chinese arena. We will review 7 factors to pay more attention to that will allow you to have a more positive influence on your Chinese counterparts. We're going to discuss what are the new language barriers. We're also going to review what is controllable versus not controllable. Okay? We're talking about the digital communications dependency now that everything is moved online. We're going to talk about trust and building relationships, or Guanxi, in this new era. We're going to talk about cultural sensitivity and greater self-awareness to help you understand how your Chinese counterparts think in the context of rising geopolitical tensions and how you deal with that. And we're also going to talk about the emotional and mental health issues that are created by the way that people are working now in China and working online. All right? First is language barriers. Learning new languages used to be universally perceived as a good thing. But what happens when it cannot be taught in the context of a different culture? So think about it. Against this backdrop, cross-cultural communications, understanding, and acceptance that is enhanced through Guanxi relationships, now the nonverbal cues that are vital during in-personal interactions are missing. So how do you convey more positive sentiments that just translations cannot? Over-reliance on virtual communication tools and increased travel restrictions have relegated interpreting cultural nuances to poor translations, coupled with the increased biases on both sides. I used to say, sorry, I forgot to advance these slides. Anyway, I used to say knowing how to speak Chinese doesn't mean you know what to say in Chinese. But today we often cannot even start our conversation off with a handshake and end with a proverbial hug. So one of the things that's really important is to understand what is controllable versus uncontrollable. Between all of the post-COVID new normal adjustments of developing constructive and prosperous business relationships in China, we must condition ourselves to only focus on controllable factors without emotions. All right? So lockdowns and travel restrictions have forced business communications into virtual environments, which is uncontrollable. How we interpret their behavior of our Chinese counterparts is controllable, as is our willingness to reimagine our biases and our own prejudices. All right? So a significant portion of the global workforce continues to work from home, even though the worst of the pandemic is over. So losing the benefits of in-person interactions isn't exclusive to doing business in China. We need to examine how Chinese companies and workers are adapting to new ways of working and collaborating, and how the dynamics of cooperation evolve when there are fewer Guanxi deepening activities to sustain trust in the Chinese cultural context. It all comes to building trust and relationships. So Deepening Guanxi is the backbone of forming successful business relationships in China. And this was primarily accomplished through in-person interaction. The pandemic changed that, perhaps forever, which means we must develop new ways to demonstrate and reciprocate goodwill to supplement fewer opportunities for these in-person Guanxi deepening interactions. Step one, of course, is to be aware of this new normal, and then we must develop new tactics to thrive within these new realities. So the question that we have to answer is, how do we build trust within China's high context culture virtually? And what cross-cultural communication skills are needed to demonstrate goodwill in a virtual environment? So, digital communication dependency. Cross-cultural communications between Westerners and Chinese people have always been challenging. Still, several new variables have emerged in the post-COVID era, driven by greater reliance on virtual meetings, complex perceptions about China's ascension in relation to the role played by the United States, and of course reduced to non-existent face-to-face interactions to develop Guanxi. Since China opened to capitalism in the early 1980s, business people have relied on in-person meetings and face-to-face interactions to build relationships and trust, also known as Guanxi. While China has led in adopting social media platforms like WeChat as a communications, marketing, and productivity tool, these were complementary to developing the essential Guanxi needed to deepen mutual trust in the Chinese business arena. All right. So during the initial outbreaks of COVID in China, cities like Shanghai were locked down for multiple months. New variants made it impossible to track and contain. As a result, new interaction patterns that relied heavily on digital communications, like Zoom, Teams, and WeChat, emerged to replace in-person meetings. The side effects include increased screen fatigue during virtual meetings and, of course, exacerbated misunderstandings from participants who have been derived from the vital nonverbal cues of face-to-face interactions. So, cultural sensitivity and awareness have become even more important. Chinese business culture and thinking are rooted in thousands of years of habits and tradition. Still, some perceptions have evolved since the pandemic, especially among younger demographics. Still, some changes relate directly to the new post-COVID normal, while others relate to a shift in Chinese national priorities. At the same time, we must be aware that geopolitical tensions and state-controlled media narratives and a greater sense of self-determination influence the evolving attitude of Chinese people that they have towards foreigners. Without the deeper Guanxi relationships created from frequent in-person interactions, it is crucial to interpret Chinese communication styles correctly and understand how your Chinese counterparts are adjusting to communicating virtually. Understanding Chinese Li-Yi considerations and their underlying motivations is now even more critical. So the one China question has existed since 1949, and geopolitical tensions between democracies and authoritarian regimes are nothing new. The question is how heightened tensions seep into our broader perceptions and subconsciously prejudice our communications. Before COVID, business interactions were primarily focused on business-related matters, and few people allowed geopolitics to affect their decisions, and even fewer allowed it to influence them emotionally. Today in China, this is no longer the case. Part of the shift is attributed to changing business conditions in the new post-COVID ways of working, while other adjustments come from the heightened paranoia of repercussions from Chinese authorities. The tone and content of business communications now must be adjusted for political awareness, as it reminds everyone that we need to avoid costly missteps. Increased Chinese nationalism is genuine among certain demographics, and sidestepping politically sensitive issues is paramount for anyone doing business in China. And lastly, the emotional and mental health. All of this tension, working from home, and lockdowns has created. Despite income status, the COVID-19 pandemic caused different levels of stress and mental health issues. In America, executive compensation rose to all-time highs, while overhiring in high-tech industries led to massive layoffs afterwards. So for context, inflation affects low and high-income families in dramatically different ways. So now imagine the impact of China's housing crisis, youth unemployment, draconian lockdowns that lasted several months on Chinese psychology. China blames America for its ills, just like American politicians blame immigration for many of ours. So in that context, imagine your Chinese counterparts' increased economic pressures and workplace stress from working 996 under these conditions. How do you interpret their attitude and approach in a virtual setting, and what adjustments are needed to reach the same level of cooperation? Now, these are some of the issues I'll be exploring in my upcoming book, Strategic Pragmatism for De-risking Post-COVID China, Circumnavigating Cultural and Psychological Landmines Inside the Chinese Arena. So, follow me for more on this series. I'm basically writing a series of articles that examine thriving in China's new post-COVID normal, which explores the psychological impact of COVID, geopolitical tensions, culture, national perceptions on cross-cultural communication processes, cooperation. The overarching goal is to improve business and economic cooperation between China and America in a world where everything is being stifled on both sides and from all corners. All right?